Alright, so welcome back to the Simple Cooking stream. Apologies if the time changed for, instead of starting at 5:30, we're starting at 5:45 in case that wasn't clear. Just in case, apologies if that kind of rearranged some of your schedules a bit. Basically, we're just trying to see if we can give ourselves a little bit more time for prep so that we're always starting on time. So 5:45 seems like it's perfect. So we'll basically start at 5:45 from now on. If any of you guys have any questions about that or comments, please feel free to email us or leave a comment in the video. Otherwise, we'll get started. So today we're going to be making Belgian waffles. And Belgian waffles are a bit different than your standard fresh waffle that you'll have here in the United States if you're watching from the United States. Basically, instead of using just baking soda or baking powder to give it a kind of fluffiness, this will actually be done with yeast on top of baking soda just in case. And personally, I like these a lot because while it is a little bit more work than your standard waffle mix waffle, the great thing about it is that it has a lot more flavor to it, has a bit of a brownness and crunch to it while still being soft on the inside. And overall, most people that I show this kind of waffle to, it's just way better. So for today, what we're going to need is some flour. So this is about 1.5 cups to 1.25 cups. You can change it how you want, but I'll let you know at the end what the consistency is supposed to be. You're going to need about 4 teaspoons or 4 tablespoons of sugar. Again, this is a bit to your own preference, but I recommend to stick with tablespoons. And this right here is about 1 teaspoon and 1/4 teaspoon of yeast. It has to be active dry, not instant yeast. This is about 1 egg. I recommend it being cold, so right out of the fridge, or just as cold as you can make it. This is about 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, excuse me. So baking soda, you're just gonna need about that much. If you go a little above or below, it's perfectly fine. Just don't go any more than a teaspoon. This right here is going to be about 1.25 cups of cold milk. It can be any milk that you use. Whole milk obviously will give it a bit more of a fattiness and more flavor, but I'm just using fat-free here, and it really doesn't matter. You just want to make sure you have about this much milk, and it has to be cold. Lastly, you're going to need about 6 tablespoons of butter. It has to be melted either over the pot, or in this case we're doing it through the microwave. So you just want to have something like that on the side. And when you're making these waffles, obviously you're going to need a waffle iron. It can either be a handheld one that you put over your stove, or an electronic plug-in one that we have here. You don't need anything complex like this. It can be any shape, just has to be an iron. And some type of oil to put over the iron, so either some oil or a spray butter or spray oil if you have that. It really doesn't matter as long as you just have something that is fairly oily. You want something that can just be a nice barrier for your waffle. So again, I'm going to be using my mixer just to speed things up, but we'll start with mixing the butter with the egg, the flour, and the sugar. So first things first is we want to do our dry ingredients. So you want to get your sugar, you want to get your flour, and you want to mix your egg and your butter. So we can move our egg in here, and the egg. And then you can go ahead and whisk it by hand, or if you have a mixer, add in your whisking attachment and mix it about at a 3 speed, maybe 2. You just want to thoroughly mix everything together, all the ingredients, to get kind of this dry clumpiness. More importantly, you want the butter to be thoroughly mixed together just to make sure that it's well infused with the flour, because eventually when we add the milk, If your butter is not infused well, you're going to get a bit of clumping, and while that's not too bad for this type of recipe, it's better just to always do things like this. So it'll take a while if you do it by hand, but you'll end up with a mixture looking like this. Now we can go ahead and add the milk in. Now you can also do this in another method, and that is doing everything but the flour. Either way, you just want everything thoroughly mixed. Okay. So what we're going to do now is just get a little spatula and just bring the sides down. If you're doing this by hand, this won't be necessary since it's easier to keep track of the batter. But as you can see, it's kind of becoming a more batter-like consistency. So it already looks like something that you can put in your waffle maker, but not yet, because if you put this in, there's nothing to give it any lift. And what that will do is it'll just become more of a hard cookie or cracker and either stick to your waffle iron, or at best it'll just become a burnt hard mess. So this isn't something that you want to put in your waffle iron yet. Again, we're using yeast, which means you have to let everything settle, preferably overnight in the fridge. And I'll mention that again at the end when everything's done, but you just want everything to have been done overnight. The longer you let yeast settle and rise, the more flavor you'll have. Okay, let's mix it a little bit more. Okay. Now that's thoroughly mixed and everything's well combined, we'll just throw in our yeast and baking soda last. And again, while the yeast is extremely important, you do want to still add some baking soda. This is just to give it a little bit of an extra push for lifting it. Okay. Put this in and mix it again. Once again, you just want to grab your spatula, just move it around the edges to bring all of the yeast and baking powder in and anything else that's dry. If you have a mixer, always make sure you kind of get the center of your whisk attachment, and this is just to make sure that nothing sticks and you are taking well advantage of all the ingredients you threw in. Don't want to put anything to waste. Other side just in case. This seems like it's fine. Okay, let's try it again. Okay, so once you have everything well combined, you can go ahead and put your whisk or your whisk attachment, if you have a mixer, to the side, and you take a look at your batter. It's going to be very thick in consistency. You may even start seeing bubbling already, but if not, that's perfectly fine as long as you added healthy yeast to it. And so what you're going to do is, I recommend putting this inside a type of container you can pour. So anything like this sort of jug-like container that I have, easy to just pour out a mixture. And what you're going to do is pour all of your batter inside of the container. And you want to leave probably double the height in a space above it. So if you're pouring about this much of batter, you want to make sure that you have this much of space left over. Because what's going to happen is, because it's using yeast, the yeast is going to start feeding and growing. And so by the next night, what's going to happen is you're going to have this. It's going to grow all the way to the top right here. So you want to be extremely careful with your yeast. Anything shorter, and you're going to have a mess that you have to clean up. So this is why. So next, because I already have this one pre-made from the night before, you're going to be able to see how the waffle is made. So again, I'm going to use a waffle iron. So it's extremely hot right now. We actually kept it in the plugged in just to make sure that it's hot and ready to go. So what you're going to do is, with your waffle iron on, you can see it's steaming a lot. You're going to grab some of your butter flavored spray oil, or you can also use a paper towel with some olive oil if you don't have that available. Just give it a quick spray. And with the batter that you made, this is why I recommend a pourable container. Don't shake it around, don't stir it, just leave it as is. And just gently layer it in. It's okay if you do a little excess or not enough, though I recommend always being on the not enough side, because what will happen is if you put too much, the batter is going to start leaking outside of the waffle iron. And that'll be a bit more to clean up. So we'll just let that cook for a bit. Okay. And so most waffle irons may have a ready light on there. And that's extremely helpful, because it basically just helps you know when it gets up to temperature. And 9 out of 10 times, what's going to happen is the waffle iron will kind of drop in texture and temperature once you add the batter. And if you do that, the light will turn off. However, that may not always happen, so I always recommend just sitting here and watching the waffle iron while it's cooking. Just kind of time it yourself, and eventually, over time, you'll start to know at the top of your head how long it will take to cook. You can also smell it once it's completely well done. It's a pretty easy smell to get. It basically smells like baking bread. And you want to actually get these waffles a little more crispier than your average waffle, because the batter is a lot thicker. So while the outside might be fully cooked, it may be a little soft on the inside. Not undercooked to say, but it'll be a little too soft for your liking. So you want to just do it until you have a bit of a light browning. And you can even check the waffle iron while you're doing this. So you just grab it, lift it up. You can see that's not done yet. It's just cooked, but it's not browned yet. So we're just going to let it cook for a little bit more. And the reason why we always put oil on the iron is to make sure that the dough does not stick. Because while you can cook it without the oil, and even if it says it's coated in a non-stick Teflon coating, you really want to put something there just in case, because the worst thing to happen is all of your batter sticking to the iron and making it a pain to kind of take out on your own. So again, just leave it there, leave it alone. You don't have to worry about any sort of flipping or anything like that. The iron's hot on both sides. If you're using it over a stove, You may have to flip it a bit just to make sure that it's completely hot, but it doesn't have to worry too much about this thing. If you don't have a waffle iron or anything of that sort, what you can do is you can actually use this batter to make pancakes. It's the same process. Basically, the only difference is instead of putting it inside a waffle iron, you can put it on a flat type of pan and make some easy pancakes that are a lot fluffier than your average ones and more flavorful in my opinion. So let's give it a check. And so you can see the waffle has been completely browned and cooked. And so you can even hear a bit of crunching whenever you step on it. So let me just grab a quick little plate. And so, there you have it. That's how you make a waffle. So if you have any other further questions, be sure to leave a comment or email us on simplecookingstream@gmail.com. And if you have anything else to say, be free to let us know. But other than that, have a nice day and see you next week.